Hi everyone, it's Ileana and I have a video to share with you today. It's a little bit longer than normal, so we'll just get started. I'm going to stamp on a strip of Nina Solar White um, cardstock, and I'm using the Lawn Fawn Frosty Fairies, and I've just set them all on here, and I'm going to stamp them with some Memento ink, some Tuxedo Black, because I will be doing Copic coloring. And I did cut out a lot of the coloring from the video just because the video was already long. And so you'll just see the finished product at the end. Now that all the coloring is done, I'm going to take out my MISTI again, and I am going to stamp it with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I like doing this, especially with colored in cards, just because I think it adds a little bit of a cartoonish feel to the images. I'm adding some clear embossing powder, and I will heat set the powder with my heat gun. And I did notice that the doorknob on my house is not colored in, and so I will carefully take a gold Wink of Luna, or is it Wink of Stella, um, pen and just color that in. Now, I am going to take this Marby snow marker, and I'm just going to go around the areas where snow would collect on a home. And what this marker does is that you heat it with your heat gun, and it will cause that marker to kind of foam up, and it does look like snow. I did find that if you let it dry, if you do too much, it doesn't puff up as much. So if it still looks a little wet, it works the best that way. And I wanted to get this marker last year, and it was so popular that I had to actually wait till after the season was over. So I went ahead and ordered it in the spring so that I would have it for this year. So hopefully you can get your hands on it. Now I'm adding the coordinating dies to my stamped images, and I'm going to add a little bit of medical tape to it to hold it in place. And now that I've run it through my die cutter, I'm just one little piece got a little flattened, so I just added a little bit more. Now for the background, I'm using this brand new, it's brand new to me, this Hero Arts Blizzard Bold Prints. And it's kind of like a snow background. So I'm adding a lot of Versamark to the back, to my stamp, and then I'm going to stamp it. I did put a little bit bigger than a half a sheet. It measures 8.5 by 6.5, just because it's a big stamp, and the original MISTI will hold these 6x6 stamps. And I just thought that if I'm going to spend the time stamping a big background, I can use the leftovers like in a strip. So now that I've added my Versamark to my cardstock, now I'm taking some Wow Midnight Dream embossing powder, and I'm going to heat emboss this. It's a sparkly navy blue color, and I thought it would kind of make it look like an evening sky, or a darker sky rather than the baby blue. I just thought it would be really cool to have that. My friend Laurel Beard sent me this embossing powder, so I thought I would try it out. And I am heating it from the underside just because it's glittery and I don't want the glitter to go everywhere. So I started warming it up from the bottom, and now that it's all set, I am going to take my largest stitched rectangle from Lawn Fawn, and I'm just going to cut out a piece. So you see there's a big enough strip at the bottom that you could use on another project. I also cut out a white piece of cardstock with the same stitched rectangles, just so that I could put my sentiment down at the bottom, and I wanted the stitching to go around that piece as well. So what I did was I just cut it, and I'm stamping my sentiment, and I'm using a Night of Navy ink pad from Stamping Up for the word fairy because I am going to heat emboss it. And I need to add my glitter embossing powder um, to it. So I'm over stamping it with some Versamark ink. That way the embossing powder will stick to it. And I'm just using a dry brush to remove any um, of the embossing powder that's not where it's supposed to be. I forgot to prep my panel with my embossing bag. And now I'm going to do the rest of the sentiment also in the black onyx. So I needed to emboss the sparkle, the midnight dream embossing powder first, otherwise it would have stuck to the black ink as well. So I'm just using this grid that you can download for free on My Sweet Petunia, and I'm just using the lines to line up where I want the sentiment to be. And I'm using my magnets to hold it down because there's a crease in my overlay and it kind of makes it bubble up. So it's nice that you could use the magnet to hold it down. Also, when you emboss, sometimes it warps your paper. So having the magnets to hold down your paper, it's really great for that. Now I'm just going to add some clear embossing powder and heat set that. Now I'm trying to figure out where I want my snowdrift to go, and I'm using the stitched hillside also from Lawn Fawn. So I'm going to pick one out. I know I want it to be a big swish, and so I'm trying to figure out which one it is so that the um, hill goes right over the sentiment. So I'm trying to figure out where I want it to be, and I want it to go about like that. So I'm just going to make sure that all my elements are going to fit. And once I have all of that figured out, I could use some of that medical tape to hold it down so I could run it through my die cutter. And now I'm going to assemble my card. I'm going to start with some foam adhesive on the back of the hillside. And I'm just going to kind of play around before I adhere everything down. And because this is probably going to get mailed, I don't really want anything to fall flat, so I like to add lots of adhesive. And I added a little bit of adhesive to the house, so I need to double up on the back side, and instead of trying to figure out where to put it, I just adhered the house to the snowdrift, and now I'm doubling up on my adhesive on the other part that's exposed. I'm just going to use some dot runner for my mushroom there, and then if I need to add a little piece, I can add it to the top of the mushroom. And now I feel like my fairy is getting lost in that snowdrift, so I thought what I would do is put a piece of vellum behind her. One of my friends had recommended it. I wasn't sure, and she said add a moon or add a circle vellum, and I thought, well, we'll make it look like it is the fairy's glow. And so I added some holographic embossing powder. So I'm just taking my 1 3/4 inch circle punch, and I've cut out my piece, and now I'm checking to see which one I like better. If I like the plain piece of vellum or if I like the holographic embossed vellum. And I decided to go with the sparkly one, the holographic one. So I'm just using the corner of my MISTI to put all my layers together. By tucking it into the corner, you'll get your perfect layers. And because the base part of the MISTI is deep enough, it can work with those layers that have the foam on the back. I'm going to add the little fairy to the the embossed circle. First, I'm going to add some dimension to her by adding some of the foam adhesive. And the 3M foam works really well even on the embossed circle. It'll hold it in place. So I'm going to add her first, and I'm going to add the adhesive to the backside of the embossed circle, and I'm going to add it behind the fairies so that you don't see the adhesive behind, since it is vellum and you can probably still see it. And it's okay if the edges of the circle are a little warped because it'll just add some dimension to it. So I'm adding a few strips of this really strong adhesive. It'll help with sticking it onto the snow background that's also embossed with glitter. So I'm just removing the backing of my adhesive, and then I'll place her on there. You could just finish there, but I decided to add a little bit more interest. I wanted to add a little bit of a frame around my stamped scene there. I took a Versamark ink pad and I just squished it onto some cardstock. I really didn't need to do it entirely. I just needed it around the edges because you don't see any of the glitter embossing in the middle because I'm just going to cover that up. I'm adding some Elizabeth Craft 2-inch tape, adhesive tape, onto the back of the card. I didn't realize that I did not add this panel to a card front, and I actually take it apart and put it on there later. So basically I add this panel to card base, and then I add the card base to the scallop piece. So I'm just going to add a little bit of Wink of Stella, of the clear Wink of Stella, to the wings, and that's it. Thanks so much for watching and hanging in here with this long video. Please give it a thumbs up and be sure to hit the subscribe button. All of the products that are used in this video will be in the description below. Have a great day.